we have two Kens, or is that the same Ken in here twice in the attendees?
I'm not sure, but I have 12 o'clock, and I think we ought to get started to stay with everyone's schedule. Welcome. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our third session of our new Refocus and Rebuild webinar series. My name is Sandy Ratliff, and we are delighted to be partnering with the Southwest Virginia Small Business Development Centers, the UVA College of Wise Office of Economic Development, and Aegis IT to present this bi-weekly series focused on technology IT topics for businesses and organizations of all sizes. Before I introduce my co-host today, I did want to make some housekeeping things. One, this session is being recorded for training purposes, and so if I hope that's okay with you, and it will also be made available on Virginia Community Capital's Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as the partners I just mentioned. They will have it available on their sites as well. Also, in order to keep the webinar flowing and staying within our 1 hour time frame, we do have everyone muted. However, we do want to hear from you, and if you have a question for our presenter today, if you will please post those in the Q&A section. We will address those at the end of the session. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Cindy Fields with the Virginia Highlands Small Business Development Center, who will be co-hosting and moderating the session going forward. So Cindy, take it away.
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome everyone. We're really excited today to have Justin with us. I can personally say, and I will say this on behalf of all of the SBDCs in Southwest Virginia, our 4 offices, that if there are 3 things I think that we have seen that have been a huge need during the pandemic, it would be helping businesses to be better skilled in making themselves visible through social media. Also, I would say that another high area of expertise need is in the area of web development, and then also helping companies figure out how to do e-commerce through their websites and working with that social media. So I'm very excited about today's presentation. So just to give you a little bit of bio and background information on Justin Blair. He is the CEO and president of Eldie Incorporated. When he was 12, Justin's dad started teaching him the basics of web development for his small local business. And Justin fell in love with the creation process. So in 2012, he started his professional career working for another company. However, in 2015, Justin and his wife, Taylor, started a web design agency out of their home to help small businesses and churches have an effective but professional website at an affordable price. Fast forward to 2021, Justin now is the CEO of Eldie Incorporated, which has locations in the Tri-Cities, Nashville, Tennessee, and Asheville, North Carolina. Their company works on several large e-commerce websites that grosses millions of dollars a year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin.
Hey, thank you so much for that. Can you guys hear me okay? Make sure the audio is still coming. Okay, good deal. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you all. Cindy, thank you so much for that introduction there. And I've got a presentation I'd like to share with you all. So let me get the slides started, and then I will share my screen. Once that pops up, give me 2 seconds to do that. And I wanted to confirm, I do have the ability to share, correct? I want to double check. I suppose I should have shared before.
You should have.
Okay, give me 2 seconds. I was putting in the chat earlier, technology is always fun. It always works just how we want it to until it doesn't. All right, let's see. All right, y'all should be able to see my screen now. Is that correct? And I'm going to start this slideshow here. Is it just a black screen? Okay, there we go. Can you all see? Can you all see what I see?
Yes.
It says refocus and rebuild. So refocus and rebuild is what we're doing here. We're talking about websites, e-commerce sites, and then site and security. So I want to kind of jump into a few different things. Small little tidbit about Eldie Incorporated. We were founded in 2015 as Eldie Design. We're now a team of 7, and we just onboarded 2 new employees. So at the end of this month, we'll be a team of 9. So we're quickly growing, and we have clients in multiple industries across the states. We don't work with anyone outside the states yet, but we have had some inquiries to do that. And also, web security is a huge passion of ours. So whenever I got into this, my dad, a little background on me, my dad owned an IT company. And so obviously security was a big deal to him. So that has sort of just, played a big role in my life as I've gone on to work with different clients in different industries. They had different needs. And so we had to learn a lot about security and how to properly secure a website, how to help take care of them and get them where they need to be, and help them from getting hacked, things of that nature. And we work with clients that do sell nationally and globally on their e-commerce sites. We work on those sites and help secure them. So a little bit of credentials there on why I can kind of give this talk and talk about some of these different things. I want to give you guys a fun fact about our name. Everyone always asks, what does Eldie mean? What does Eldie mean? What is that? A lot of times here, people say, oh, is that Eldie or something? They think it's, pronounced differently. But Eldie is actually an Italian name. It's a female. Like if you're having a daughter or something, you may name them Eldie. And that means strong warrior or smart counselor. So whenever we were choosing a name for our company, we wanted something that was unique, and we wanted to be strong warriors for our clients, and we wanted to be smart counselors for them as well. So I know that's weird because we're a web design business, but being a strong warrior and a smart counselor goes into several areas of business. So we wanted to be able to do that for them. Our mission is to add value, exceed expectations, and grow their business. And so that's what we are seeking to do. Let's talk about some basic website and web server security things. So some of these things may seem like really just like rudimentary, but let me run through them with you because if they bear repeating if you're not already doing it. If you have a website that's an e-commerce site, you're going to have users logging in. You're going to have login screens. You yourself probably have a login that's going to be built with a content management system, which we'll talk about here in just a bit. And so you're going to have these login screens. It is extremely, extremely, extremely important that you have a strong password for your username. Too often, people they use the same password for everything. So once I get into your Facebook account, I can have access to your bank account and to your website and to your right. So strong password is extremely, extremely important. And let me show you, this is what most of our passwords look like, right? Now you may go, oh my gosh, did you just bang your hands against the keyboard to create that? We use a tool called Strong Password Generator. I've actually sent over to Sandy a resource PDF. I'm not sure if she'll distribute that at the end of this, or maybe she already has, but on there's a couple of resources, and there's a link to that website, strongpasswordgenerator.net or something. And you can put in your parameters. I want special characters. I want uppercase and lowercase letters, and it'll generate these passwords for you. And this is great. I have clients that will use it and they'll get a strong password and then they'll just use the same strong password on everything. That kind of defeats the purpose. So I encourage people, use a strong password and use a strong password on every single different login that you have. Use a different password for everything. Don't use the same password. And too often, a lot of times, websites in development, they'll use, username admin, password admin, or username, password, something really simple so people just quickly get in. That's not good either, because then that creates a vulnerability that may not get fixed whenever it goes live. So a lot of times we talk about, we use single sign-on, so we don't actually have passwords and logins to websites. We log into a different database first and then log into our clients' websites. It has an extra measure of security, and we ask them to do the same thing. One of the other things is two-factor authentication. 2FA is oftentimes what it's called. And you guys, almost everyone hates 2FA because it's one of the things you have to log in, and it's going to send you a text message. You have to put that code in, and then you finally have access, right? A lot of banks will use this. A lot of domain registrars use this. But this is good. If you can add this to your website for your administrators that are logging in, that's huge. It's going to help really cut down on, someone getting access to your website doesn't need access to your website. And so there's different ways to do 2FA. A lot of times if you're using, again, a content management system like a WordPress or something, there are plugins that you can use to install, and they will add that to that for you. So strong passwords, 2FA, and then the last thing would be an SSL certificate. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about SSL because there's a lot of mystery around this, and then we're going to move into some a little more advanced things. The SSL is a big deal because for two reasons. One, back in 2018, Google changed their algorithms, and so you have to have a secure website to rank well on their platform now. And so if you have a website that's just says HTTP : and then your domain name, it's hurting your SEO. It's hurting your search engine optimization. And so that's a really easy fix. You can get a free SSL. And the reason you want one is an SSL is going to encrypt the data. So if you have a form on your website, a contact form, if you're asking people to fill out surveys on your website, how did we do? If people are putting credit card information in, you have to have something that's going to encrypt all that data so it doesn't get in the wrong hands during transfer from your form to your email, et cetera, et cetera. And so SSLs are great. And it was something that only e-commerce websites had to have. Back in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, if you were selling online, you would have this. But otherwise, you didn't really need it. And then 2018 happened, and Google had this big Safer Web initiative. And so they wanted everyone to have an SSL certificate. And then phenomenally, some great organizations have come out with free SSLs. These things used to be extremely expensive. So let's kind of talk about the difference between a free SSL and a paid SSL, and why you'd want one or the other. And SSL just stands for Secure Socket Layer, if I remember my acronyms correctly. That doesn't really matter for anything. It just means that there's layers of encryption that now go on whenever you have data on the website. So let's look at this. This is just a quick graphic, really easy. A free SSL and a paid SSL have the exact same encryption. It's the exact same security, but there's some things that you don't get with the free. You're not going to get support. So if you have an issue, if you have problems installing it, if you've installed it, you think correctly, but there's something wrong, there's not someone you can call or email and get support on that unless you're working with like a web development company, in which case they're taking care of this for you, hopefully. You don't get any warranty. And so a warranty is, if the SSL sort of goes down, if they're attacked and their SSLs quit working, and your website then suffers loss or damages because of that, there's no warranty on a free one. So if you're taking credit cards, this probably isn't a good fit for you. Whereas a paid one, can go from 10 million up to the billions of dollars range. And then there's no long validity. And what that basically means is the free SSLs are good for 30 to 90 days. A lot of web design hosting companies will renew these things for you. But if you're doing sort of a DIY site, then it's something you have to go back in and renew every 30 to 90 days. And you have to remember to do it. Otherwise, it'll be invalid. And then whenever someone tries to go to your website, it'll say, this website is not secure, which is terrible. And it will deter people from wanting to be on your website, come back to your website, etc. Whereas with a paid SSL, you can buy these things for like 5 years. You buy it once and it's good for 5 years. And so it's one of those sort of set it and forget it kind of ideas. So if you're running an e-commerce website, if you are taking credit cards online, if you have a service industry and you're taking, people are paying their invoice online, or if you're a church, you're taking donations on your website, I would highly recommend a paid SSL for the amount of money you're going to spend. I think it's like, somewhere between $50 and $150 a year. For the amount of money you're going to spend for the SSL, it's well worth the peace of mind to have the warranty, to have the support, and all of those things. If you're just a business that doesn't take credit cards online, but you do have forms, a contact form, a subscribe here form, something of that nature, the free SSL is perfect. And a lot of times we find that a lot of these service industries and churches, smaller businesses and churches, things like that, they will just link off their website for donations. This is great. This puts the burden of security on the company that you're working with versus on you, and kind of removes some of the liability on your part. So we oftentimes recommend or suggest that, especially if it's a small business or a small church doesn't do a whole lot online when it sells. If you can send that to a different place that's not on your website, that's great. Now, if you're an e-commerce website, you really can't. You're selling products right there on your site, and so you really need to have one of these things locked in and done correctly. Let's talk about a couple different types of websites real quick, and then we're going to get into more about e-commerce specifically. So you have a CMS, which is a content management system, a content management software, and you just have straight up code. And it's more and more rare that I find a website that's just been coded. And if I do, it's typically not e-commerce. These are small business sites. These are, a service industry, something of that nature. It's not oftentimes you find an e-commerce site that's just, PHP and HTML, and there's no content management system really running in the background. And so you may say, well, what is a CMS? Well, let me show you a couple of examples of one. You'll probably recognize a few of these logos. These are some of the most popular CMSs that are out there right now. And we see that on the left-hand side of your screen, WordPress, Magento, Joomla, these kind of CMSs are the ones that are mostly being used by developers. Now, Webflow is pretty new. It's more or less for designers. If you can design a website, but you don't really know how to code a website, then Webflow is sort of where people are going for that. But WordPress, Magento, and Joomla are where people that like to work in code and build out different things, they kind of go there. And then Squarespace and Wix are sort of more your DIY. You're just getting started. You want to build a website, that kind of thing. Probably 30% of the internet right now, maybe a little less, is a WordPress site. WordPress has really kind of taken over, and it's for a good reason. It's free. You can actually get a WordPress site, and it can be free. Now, WordPress has something super confusing that they've done. There's two different kinds of WordPress, and so this is a good distinction. It's good to know this. There's WordPress.com, and there's also WordPress.org. And here's the difference between them. WordPress.com is hosted on their servers. You pay them. WordPress.org is self-hosted. So you can host it on a server in your house. You can host it on your local machine. You can host it on a server in Texas, whatever, right? And so WordPress.org is what we mostly use. It's open source, and there's a lot of developers. Hundreds of thousands of people out there developing plugins for this, themes for this, solutions for this. That's why we like WordPress, and that's kind of where we land a lot. We have a couple of sites that are Webflow sites that we've worked on as well, but we typically inherit those. We don't start in Webflow. We typically like to start with where we're comfortable. So for us, the big one is WordPress. That's what we focus on. Now, WordPress does have a couple of security issues that are worth mentioning. There have been several flaws over the years that have sort of been shown. And if you go talk to someone that historically has had a website, they'll say, oh, don't do WordPress. It's easily hacked, things of that nature. That's just not the case anymore. They've made a lot of advancements to make sure that they're moving forward in a good light, and they're really kind of keeping people secure. And so there are some really good plugins that we'll talk about a little later here in the talk that are very specific to WordPress and kind of making sure that those things stay secure. So I kind of want to touch on Magento just for a second. If you are a very large enterprise client, you're doing millions a month, Magento is a really good fit, I think, for that. We've only ever had one client in Magento that they shipped globally. They were a several $100 million company, and they were using Magento. Whenever we found them, we just kept them in Magento. There's a lot more that can sort of be done for that enterprise level. Anything less than like $1 million a year, WordPress is probably a good solution for you for your e-commerce site. So e-commerce security. One of the biggest trends we've seen recently is authorization testing. Okay, well, what is authorization testing, Justin? Well, what that is whenever someone writes a bot to test credit cards on your website. And so they go to your website and they will run like 68,000 transactions in the span of just a couple of hours. And if you have a website that takes credit cards online, then you already know that every time a transaction is ran, whether it fails or goes through, you're charged a fee. And so you can imagine fees on 68,000 transactions, especially when none of them resulted in sales, can be astronomically high. Specifically, whenever this happened to a client of ours several months back, whenever this started ramping up and we were starting to see this as a trend, what happened for them is that that 68,000 transactions resulted in almost $10,000 in fees. Now, thankfully, the credit card company that they were working with and that we worked with them, and we got all that solved and fixed. And that's where we started going, hey, this is becoming an issue. We really need to stay on top of this. And that's whenever everyone else kind of started seeing it too. So one of the big things you can add is a reCAPTCHA. This is Google's reCAPTCHA. You may just know it as CAPTCHA. And what a CAPTCHA is that I'm not a robot checkbox. You guys have seen those probably all over the internet, filling out a form, subscribing to something, opening up an account somewhere. And you can do there's a couple different kinds of CAPTCHAs. There is the V2, which is the I'm not a robot checkbox. And there's the V3 that kind of just sits in the background. And a really good example of a website that uses the V3 is Vistaprint. You guys maybe have been on Vistaprint. And if you're ever on there, or you can pull it up sometime and look, there's a little box that sort of trails the side of the screen that just says, reCAPTCHA, Google reCAPTCHA has like the little symbol. And so that just sort of runs in the background, and everything you do is kind of giving you a score. Then whenever you go to check out, it's based off what your score is. They'll let you check out or it won't, right? And so if you're doing really weird things like opening up several tabs, or, you're able to, click on several different products and add them to your cart within just a couple of seconds. Those are like bot kind of activity. And so it doesn't like that. It'll kind of flag those things and not let you check out. So adding CAPTCHA to your e-commerce store is huge. And I would add it everywhere. I would add it to your login screens. I would add it to the checkout process. I'd add it to every single form that you have someone fill out. That's a really big deal to make sure that that's on there and configured correctly. The next one is don't host overseas. The laws are a little different. And so if your data is overseas somewhere, or if your data is in another country somewhere, it can be tampered with differently than it can here in the States. There are laws that kind of protect your data and your customers' data, like their credit cards, their emails, all that kind of things, here in the States that don't exist overseas. Use a dedicated host if you can. This is a bit more expensive, but anytime you're on a shared hosting platform, think of it about sort of living in an apartment versus living in a house. If you live in a house and your neighbor is a mile down the road, or your neighbor is just, even 100 yards down the road, and they get termites in their house, the chances of you getting them are pretty low, right? Or that they get cockroaches, the chances of you getting them are pretty low because they're so far away, right? It's sort of a dedicated host is a house, but a shared host is kind of more like an apartment. And so imagine with me, you're in unit 1 and I'm in unit 2. If we get cockroaches, you also have cockroaches, right? And so on that shared host, there's more opportunity for malware to infect one site and then kind of spread itself out to other sites as well. Shared host companies do a lot to protect that from happening. I'm not saying that will happen, but it is a possibility. And so we always try to suggest people use a dedicated host. It's just your website on that server, or like in our case, we have hosting, but all of the people that are on we have dedicated servers, but everyone that's on it is our client. So we know exactly what's going on in those websites. They're being monitored, scanned for malware and viruses on a daily basis. So we can kind of keep things under wraps and watch that. So use a dedicated host, super important. And then use some security plugins. If you're using a content management system like WordPress or Magento or Shopify, there are security plugins out there. There are things that you can use that will scan your website for malware. There are plugins out there that will, like WordFence, for instance, for WordPress. WordFence and Security. I'm not sure how it's actually pronounced, but both of those, I put links to a couple of articles about those in that resource document. Both of those, if you install and configure correctly, they are going to be a world of help to you, because they're going to be running this in the background, checking for viruses, checking for whenever things are out of date. That's a big thing too. Let me back up here to this. If you're running WordPress or any of these other ones and you're not updating your plugins regularly, or your themes regularly, you're asking someone to come in and hack, right? So one of the big things that we offer, and most dedicated hosts will offer, is that they will scan your website and they will send you an email saying, hey, these things have to have security updates that need to be fixed or need to be patched. And so there's a security update for this. And, you may be updating your Elementor plugin from, 5.9.3 to 5.9.4. And it seems like something so small, but they've patched something they found is letting people get into the back door of your website. There was a chat plugin a while back that we had used on a couple of our larger business sites, and they had a security issue. And so we were trying to patch these issues as fast as we could. And there was one of the sites someone got in through that plugin and was able to have access to the back end of the website. And what's really beautiful about staying on top of this sort of stuff is that we were able to identify it quickly, and we were able to shut it down and restore from a backup that had a better plugin, a better security plugin, and then we were able to update from that. So whoever had access to it, whatever they had done, we were able to delete and then put back up what we needed to. So those are just a couple of small things when it comes to e-commerce. And ultimately, the best advice I can give you is find someone that knows what they're doing and work with them. Take as much of these kind of classes as you can, learn as much as you can. But there's a lot to learn. I'll be 28 this year, and I've been doing website stuff since I was 12. Professionally, I took my first job at 18, right out of high school, doing this for a company. And so I've got 10 years professionally in the business, just about. And there's still so much to learn, and it changes all the time. I mean, even just since last year, authorization testing wasn't really a big deal last year. It ramped up in September of this year, and has gone from there. And we can see that looking back, it makes sense, because everyone got money from the government and the stimulus checks. They started shopping online, and so it made sense that online sales skyrocketed. Stores that you used to be able to walk into, you couldn't. So you had to go shop online. So online sales skyrocketed, and then people were getting their cards hacked, and those end up on lists, and then people use those lists to do authorization testing. So let me show you a couple of e-commerce platforms that are pretty well known, and you may recognize some of these as ones that you work with. WooCommerce is probably the biggest. Magento is also one. You'll see a couple of that are overlapping from a couple slides ago. Shopify is one of the biggest ones. If I had a time machine, I'd go back in time and invest in Shopify when it was only like $7. I think that the stock now is like 140 or something. They've skyrocketed, done really well. Squarespace, you can do e-commerce on Squarespace. BigCommerce is a big one, and then Webflow is kind of getting into the e-commerce space just a little bit. So what is e-commerce? It just literally stands for electronic commerce. It's not this, you bring something up to the register and then you hand me cash and then we check out. It very much is electronic. It's all online. You're doing everything there. The transaction happens through a payment processor, all that kind of stuff. And so WooCommerce is probably one of the biggest ones. We like it because, again, it's WordPress, so it's the one that we probably use the most. But we also do a lot of development inside of Shopify, not because necessarily, I guess, that we look to do that, but we end up getting a lot of clients who have started on Shopify because it's sort of like a DIY sort of solution. And then they need some more help, some more like developer help. And so they move over and start working with us. Big things here on WooCommerce that I would mention, if you're using any of these are things I'd mentioned. Keep things up to date. I know I've already said that, but let me repeat it. Keep things up to date. Updates are huge. It's something I would be checking every time you're logging into your website and checking to see if there's updates. I would read the notes. Why do they want an update? And then one of the big things you want to be able to do, using a dedicated host, you can definitely do this, where you basically have different environments. You have your production environment, maybe you have a development environment, and staging environment. And all that means is that on the server, you have your production, which is live to the public. And then the staging is kind of like on the backside. So you can go into there and you can make a copy of your website, take it over to the staging place, update all your plugins, make sure nothing is broken, make sure everything is working right, and then push that up to live, right? That's the best way to do things. That way you don't experience downtime on your website. That way you don't have any issues where people are trying to check out, but you're updating your plugin that allows them to check out so they're not able to, things like that. The other thing is that it's good to probably just take your site down every so often for scheduled maintenance. A lot of our bigger e-commerce sites that are doing, $1 million a year or $1 million plus a year, even if they're even just doing like 500,000, we recommend doing, a takedown time where we say, hey, your traffic is the least, the third week of the month for whatever reason, whatever they're doing in marketing, that's the month that they're doing the least, or that's the week they're doing the least. That week, we're going to find a day, and after hours, we're going to take your website down, do some maintenance on it, open a maintenance page, and we're going to test some of these things. And the reason behind that with e-commerce, we want to make sure there aren't orders coming in while we're making changes on the back end, right? Because then whenever we push it to live, it'll erase those orders because they weren't on the staging side of things. So we'll throw up a maintenance page at 10 p.m. at night, and then we'll run through and do some maintenance, then have the website back up by 11 or something of that nature. That's pretty common because you don't want to miss out on orders, but we also want to make sure things stay up to date and secure. And we'll try to send out emails, to their clients, have them use some kind of email software. They send out and say, hey, we're going to have our website's going to be down for maintenance tomorrow night at 10. So any orders you want to place before then, make sure you do it before 9:45 or whatever the case is. So those are all sort of some just like key points there about e-commerce. Let's talk about specifically WordPress and WooCommerce security. So one of the big things is you want to have backups. If you don't have backups and your website gets hacked, you're dead in the water. So make backups. WP Engine, which is the host that we recommend and the host that we use, all of our clients are on it, does automatic backups for us. And so we can do on-demand or automatic backups. That's huge. These are two plugins that you can use if you're using WordPress, Updraft or Backup Buddy. If you're using something else, I think that Squarespace does backups for you automatically, and I think that Shopify does as well. But it's been a while since I've looked at those, so I can't remember the specifics. What my development department could probably tell you more on the specifics there as far as the backups. But whatever you're using, make sure your website's being backed up, whether it's e-commerce or not. Make sure you have backups. And then that way, if anything does get messed up, if someone does get into the back end, whatever the case may be, you are able to restore from that backup, and you're back up and rolling just like it never happened. Use a security plugin like WordPress or Securi. This is the ones for WordPress I was telling you about. I think that WordFence specifically scans your website for malware, and Securi kind of does the same thing. Those are good. It's good to have something scanning in the background, looking to see what's going on. If you've been the victim of an attack before, it's good to have these sort of things in place to make sure that you're mitigating those things happening in the future. And again, if they're configured properly, then you're swimming. What's really great about a lot of these Backup Buddy, WordFence, plugins like that, the documentation in the community are great. You can kind of go there and get anything you need. So if you're trying to do things DIY, those are great places for you. You're going to find a lot of resources there. And on top of that, if you're not doing things DIY, you're working with somebody, it's good for them too, depending on how big the agency is. If they specialize in this, or maybe, it's someone that goes to your church or a friend of the family, you're trying to help them get started with their agency and they're going to do a website for you. These are great because they're going to learn a lot inside the community. There's tutorials for them. There's all these different things, right? So those are both good plugins I would suggest. And then, reCAPTCHA for WooCommerce is a paid plugin. I think that WordFence and Backup Buddy have free options, and there's also paid options for them. But reCAPTCHA for WooCommerce, it's like a $30 a year plugin, well worth the money. And it's going to secure your site login. So if you have a customer trying to log into their website, it's going to secure that. And if you have someone trying to check out, it's going to secure that. And it's just going to give them that reCAPTCHA. I'm not a robot, or whatever the case is. So those are very important. Definitely recommend. Make sure you do those. And then, host your website with WP Engine. They come highly recommended. Their servers are in Texas. Whenever the snow just happened in Texas, they stayed up and running the whole time. I got an email from them. We have several servers with them that host hundreds of clients. And so I got an email from them saying, hey, we know you're concerned about your servers. We're keeping them running. We've got generators. We have backup generators keeping, the server farms up and going. They're great. I highly recommend them. They're probably one of the most expensive WordPress hosting options that are out there, but you get everything that you pay for. So you're definitely getting your money's worth and then some. They have world-class support. They take care of the SSL certificates for you. They're doing the backups automatically for you. They're phenomenal. And that's why we personally use them, and that's why we use them for all of our clients. So WP Engine, I think is great. So let me talk about this for a second. Oh no, you've been hacked. So what are sort of the next steps that you want to do here? The big thing is you want to make sure that you restore from a backup. All right. So this is where backups come in super, super, super handy to make sure you have. And if you don't have them, again, you're sort of just dead in the water. So use some of those plugins we talked about. Once you've restored from a backup, update your themes and plugins. Make sure that you're up to date on everything that you have. Make sure that there isn't any plugins or themes that you're using. Regardless of what kind of content management system it is, there's going to be some place to update. And you want to make sure that you are doing that. And then lastly, get some kind of security alerts set up. One of the things that WP Engine does is they scan every website for malware, and then they send us, hey, this is an insecure plugin. This plugin has known issues where it is, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, and people are able to get in through a back door. And so they'll send us that, you have 7 days to either update or remove this plugin, or we're going to remove it. And so they do things like that. Other web servers will do things like that. That's huge because it kind of it's your defense for you, right? They're looking on the back end. They're trying to make sure that you stay as up to date as possible with everything. And honestly, if you're an e-commerce site, you probably have several plugins. It's not uncommon for even small e-commerce sites to be running 10 or 15 plugins on their website. It's hard to keep up with all that. Reading the documentation, knowing when new things are coming out, if you should update, why you should update, all that kind of stuff. And so a security alerts system will do that for you. And again, you can get that through WP Engine or through something like Security, some of those things that are available to you out there. I'm not sure how we're doing on time. I'm kind of towards the end here. I know there were some questions. I want to open it up to questions, and I want to answer some specific things maybe about Shopify or WooCommerce or any of those specifically that you guys may have. So how do we move into the Q&A portion of this? I apologize. I don't know.
Justin, right now, I haven't had any questions come in, and I do encourage those that are watching with us to put their questions in, but I have some, if that counts. Yeah,
I'd be happy to answer your questions.
And thanks so much on the SSL certificate tip. I really appreciate that. So some of the things I was thinking about when you were talking is when starting a new website, what are some of the top 4 to 6 things that I should do to make sure I include when I build my new website? If I'm starting from scratch, what are some of the key things that like an outline or however.
Yeah, absolutely. So specifically on security or just in general?
Just in general.
Okay.
Whatever it may be, in 6 months, I don't want to hit my head and say I should have had a V8, that I forgot something key that's going to hurt going down the road.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things in starting your website, we always talk about, there's a couple of different elements to website. There's the content, there's the design, and then there's the development. And so we've kind of broken up our whole company into those three things. We have a content department, design department, and a development department. And they all handle different aspects of the website. So when you're thinking about this, a lot of times people want to start with design. What does it look like, right? But I would encourage people to start with content. What does your website say? What does it do? What do you want it to say? What do you want people to do when they go to your website? I think that those are super important questions to ask. And so a lot of times we ask people, what are the pages that you want to build out? Obviously like a home, a contact, you may want to blog on there, an about page. If you're a service industry, maybe your services on a page, or maybe different pages for each service. And here's an SEO tip for you. The more pages you have, the better off you are, because Google doesn't rank your website, they rank your individual pages. And so if you are, if you're a deck builder in Johnson City, or a deck builder in, Abingdon, Virginia, and you just have services deck building, well, that's great. But if you had, a deck building Abingdon, Virginia webpage, that's very specific to what someone may be typing in. So you're able to serve up to them content specific to what they're looking for. Let's say you also do it in Bristol, Virginia. Okay, well, now you can have a Bristol, Virginia page, and different content, but you're serving up content that's specific to Abingdon and specific to Bristol, and those are good for SEO, especially for local businesses. So think through content first. That'd be my first recommendation, and think about what you want it to say. Right? We always talk about story branding, sort of telling your story with your website. And it's show, don't tell, right? You don't want to just say, hey, we're the best. Show me you're the best, right? Let's get some really good photos, or even a video on your website. Let's see some testimonials from people you've worked with, right? Show, don't tell. Think about that whenever you're kind of doing, the content. Then once you have the content laid out, and we're going to have these pages, and then this is sort of what I'm thinking needs to go on these pages. Then you can kind of move into design. You can start thinking through like, okay, I really like the way this website looks, and this makes a lot of sense right here, right above the fold. We can kind of show off a video of some work that we've done, or we can, have right underneath the fold, have our latest products, or our best-selling products, or whatever the case is, right? And so that design aspect kind of comes after content. But too often people want to look at websites and how they look before they start writing content. And then they're trying to fit their content and just design, and it may not fit. So that's why we suggest content first, then design. And then you have development. Once you've kind of found a design, any of these, you can build a website with any of these. WordPress, Magento, Joomla, Wix, Squarespace, Webflow. I've seen good-looking websites in all of them. We just prefer WordPress because for its longevity, it's the best solution. So if you're just getting started, any of these will be good fit for you. Maybe not Magento, but the rest of them will be a phenomenal fit, and you'll be able to find someone that can help you do that. Does that sort of answer your question?
It does, and sort of on that same track, and Cindy, don't yell at me. I just had these down, and I wanted to ask because it's curious for me. Let's say, what are some of the major mistakes that you have seen DIY website developers do? Probably the majority. I'm sure you've seen it all after all these years.
Yeah. So there's three big things I would suggest. I would say. Number one, they sign up with someone or something that owns their domain name. And I highly, as much as you can, own everything that you do, right? Own the domain name, own the website, own the content, all of it, right? Sometimes they'll, you'll go through a service and you end up, you don't end up owning the domain name, or they'll, like Google does this right now. Google will give you a free website. You can go to Google right now and get a free website. But it's like business site -13765.google.com or something, right? And it's not personalized to you and doesn't help your long-term SEO. So if you can get a domain name, you own it, and then you can start building out a site on it, then it's going to help the SEO of that website long-term. Because you have to think long-term about a lot of this stuff. That's number one. The second thing is that too often people will sort of build out a site, and it's like they're DIYing it, but it's not secured very well. They're sort of linking to other websites, or they're doing these different things. The best thing that I would suggest, we love DIYers. I have people pop in all the time. They'll buy an hour of our time just to have us sit down and consult with them, and then from there they want to run with it and do it themselves. I love it. I'm a DIYer, right? And that's kind of how I got into it. It's like tinkering and figuring things out. And so just sit down with someone that can sort of steer you in the right direction and kind of help you do it, and just sort of point you towards resources. That'd be one of the biggest things. And then the last thing is, too often people will get into they'll sign up for Squarespace or Wix or some of these things, and then they never really finish it. They never finish their website. So they have sort of a half-baked website out there, and they got a little over their head. Like, I don't want to do this. So then it's like people are finding their website online, which is great, but there isn't enough information out there, or it's sort of half-baked, or there's still like lorem ipsum, which is sort of the Latin filler text that gets put on websites a lot. And so those are things we definitely don't want. It's not good. It doesn't look professional, and it hurts your brand. It hurts your company long term.
And then one more question, and I promise, Cindy, I'm turning it over to you. You were talking about website hosting services. What tips should I look for when I am seeking a host for my website?
So hosting providers, there are three things that probably are key. Price is what people care about. Ease of use is what people care about, and then security. A lot of times people want to just go for the cheapest thing. And in web hosting, you get what you pay for. If you pay for the cheapest, you're not going to get good service. It's not going to be good. You're not going to have good security. They're not going to have ways for you to do what you need to do to keep your website up to date, secure, backed up, all that kind of stuff. And then the flip side of that is, if you're just getting started, it's really hard to pay for something that's expensive, $35 a month or $100 a month or something of that nature. So oftentimes, I tell people web hosting it's just like paying rent or paying your mortgage. Like, you have to do it to have a place to live. Your website has to have a place to live. It has to live on a server. And so you can go the super expensive route and buy your own server and put it in your basement and host it there. Or you can go rent a server somewhere and pay for it. And the big thing I would suggest, find a server that's stateside. That's why we like WP Engine. All their servers are in the States. Find a server that offers a CDN, which is a content delivery network that makes your website load lightning fast. It's really good for SEO. Find a server that will give you a free SSL certificate, like a Let's Encrypt certificate or something of that nature. And find a server that will do backups for you. And if you can get that, two of the ones I definitely suggest is WP Engine and Flywheel. They're actually the exact same company. WP Engine owns Flywheel. So if you're a WordPress website, host it with one of them. If you're anything else, Squarespace, that you have to host with Squarespace. Webflow's you have to host with Webflow. Same thing with Wix. And so the hosting kind of really only matters if you're doing like a WordPress.org website or something. But that would be sort of the main things. Look for someone that's within your price range, that's going to be in the States and have good support for you. And then also that's a secure, that they're known for their security. They haven't been hacked often, things like that.
Great. Thanks. Okay, Cindy, I've run out of my lead in my pencil, so I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, I definitely have some questions as well, Justin. I would like to go back to the comment that you made about that the number of pages does affect your SEO. So my question would be, what number of pages would you really recommend for someone who is starting a business and they want to get good SEO recognition?
So that's a good question. So it just depends. I just signed a brand new client. Actually, they signed yesterday. They're a construction company. And I was like, what pages are you all thinking about doing? So, we obviously want a home page and a general services page. And they're going to do a contact page. And then they're like, I think that's really all we need. It's like, well, 3 pages, is fine, but I'm not sure if anyone's going to find you organically. And so what we kind of moved to then was this idea of, what are 2 main keywords that are in your industry, that are services you want to do in places that you want to be in? And then let's build 2 pages for those. So we ended up doing a 5-page website for them. And 2 of those pages are just specifically services. One of them is like deck building in Kingsport, and the other one was something in Johnson City. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. But it's we're going to build out those 2 pages specifically for the SEO purpose of trying to get those keywords. I tell you, for us, we've been in business for 5 years. My website has like over 120 pages on it, right? It's massive, but it's very shallow. So it's like you get in, you're on the home page, and you go like one more click, and then like one more click, and it's like it just sort of quickly like expands out, right? And so that's just because we have several locations. We have lots of blog posts. As I said, we've only got 3 locations, but within those, we have several services for each location. So we have a web design Nashville, a web design Asheville, web design Tri-Cities, and so we kind of have to have our different services for each of those places, so it serves up the content specifically for those different geolocations. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yes, that's great. So when you start working with the business, do you typically have kind of a general template that you go over with them and trying to, kind of figure out how many pages they might need, or, how to develop that website?
Yeah. So a lot of times, so I think for us, and everyone does things a little differently. For us, our pricing is based off the number of pages. And so, if they want 10 pages, then it's so much. And if they want 5 pages, then it's half as much. Right. And so our pricing is built off the number of pages that we do for somebody. And the big thing that I would say there, we oftentimes tell people, obviously you need a home page, you need a contact page. And then if they're a service industry, I try to get them to do, I say convince, I try to, say, this is what's best for you. You want to have several services on one page, that's fine, but let's break some of these services out into their own thing. And then likewise, if they're like a church or something of that nature, what we may want to do there is sort of similar. So, their different ministries, maybe their own page. When we get to e-commerce, the big thing with e-commerce right now is that each product is typically its own page. And so what we try to do, we work with people whenever they're coming in and doing e-commerce. We just sort of say, hey, we'll do the first X amount of products. And then from there, it's so much, you can buy a batch of products, or and this is the big thing, this makes us really unique. We'll show you how to enter the products yourself, and then you can kind of maintain and enroll from there. A lot of the e-commerce sites that we have, they run the website. We're just there sort of as backup and to keep things secure and up to date for them. And it makes, they're like, hey, we want to add a brand new page or whatever. Then we kind of do that. So.
And so when you mention that your pricing is based on a number of pages, do you quote generally like a price per page, or you look at the project and say it's going to take me 5 hours to work on this page, or can you give me an idea on that?
Yeah. So our hourly rate as an agency is $100 an hour. And so we quote 3 hours per page, but by default. Now there's pages like the privacy policy, terms and conditions, things like that. We just include that in. We don't charge for those pages because you need those things on your website. But we charge that 3 hours, and depending on, it's like we have different packages. We have a starter package where we're going to use, we're going to work with you on content, figure out the pages, then we're going to find a design, a template that fits that. Then we have a small business package where it's like we do the same thing where we sort of build out the content, and then from that content, we're going to go and design a unique page for each one of those. And Sam, our art director, does a phenomenal job with those. He's fantastic. So. Okay,
great. And the other question that I get a lot, is from people who they are using Squarespace already for their point of sale system. And so it makes sense to them that they are able to use all of the technology there to, build their content and then be able to sell through the e-commerce platform. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, I know you said you really like WordPress.
Yeah, so my only issue with Squarespace is that like you're stuck with them, right? Like you can't take a Squarespace website and go host it somewhere else, and that's my only concern there is anytime you get trapped, it's like when I start getting like their lights start going off, like oh no, so that's what I like about WordPress.org. You can host it anywhere, and you can typically, you can throw a rock and hit a WordPress developer in almost any city, right? So you can always kind of find someone to work on your site. I will tell you though, with Squarespace, it's great if you're just getting started,
So do you have a lot of people that use WordPress for their website and then are able to make that work with the Square point of sale system and eCommerce?
We we don't have any clients currently that do that. I have had clients in the past that have. They had a WordPress site, and then they would use the Square point of sale. Square point of sale as well. You can use Square for the credit card processing within WooCommerce as well. So a lot of people will use WordPress and then use WooCommerce as their cart, their checkout system, and then use Square as a point of sale, or as their credit card processing. There's different ones out there. There's PayPal, there's Stripe. Someone that I recommend highly is a guy named Chris Clear with Atlantic Merchant. He's local to this area, and he does a great job. And we've sent a lot of business to him, and he's customer service oriented. Really great guy. He does really well, which is nice, because Stripe or PayPal, you're calling an 800 number, So yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
Chris was with us 2 weeks ago leading our session. So
was he?
We got to meet Chris and hear from him.
Cool. Yeah, I think Chris is great. I think he does a really good job, and he comes highly recommended from me. So there's a question in the Q&A. Do you want me to ask this out loud and answer it?
Sure.
Ken asked, what are currently the best ways to market your website? Pay-per-click, Facebook ads? How do I stand out with so many people now selling online? And I think that's a great question. I think that the best thing you could probably do right now is twofold. I think having pay-per-click ads is good because it gets you some immediate traction, but then also doing some SEO and kind of building out an SEO strategy. And then the big thing is getting to the website isn't really that hard. You can go out right now, spend $100, run Facebook ads or Google ads, even YouTube ads, and get them to your website. The hard part is once they're on your website, what do you do with them then, right? Having them sign up for an email newsletter, once they've checked out, putting them in some type of drip campaign where they continue to hear about you, that they continue to see whenever you're putting out specials or coupons or new products, having them subscribe to the blog, or, maybe you're going to give them, hey, we're offering this free thing with a purchase of $50 or more. There's all those different things. And you see this, like Target does it. Eleanor, as I mentioned, Target's like the master of email marketing. But we get an email at 2 a.m. and then the next day there's like a Target package on my front porch, right? Which is my wife buying something from Target. We've got 2 little kids, and so they're always like, oh, look at this cute outfit, and then my wife buys it, right? So, email marketing is huge. It's not dead. It's still very much alive. And so pay-per-click, SEO, get them to the website, and then get them somehow into some type of drip campaign where they are then hearing from you often and about specific things that they're looking for. And you can track all of that. You have an e-commerce site. There's some really good plugins out there. My brain just went blank, but there's one out there, and you can look this up, and you'll probably be able to find it pretty easily. But if they put something in their cart and then didn't check out, it'll send them an email saying, hey, you've left something in your cart, which is really nice. It reminds them, hey, you don't forget to check out, and they can track their buying habits. Hey, this person's been to your website and bought, shoes 3 or 4 times over the last, couple months. It may be worthwhile for you to send them a coupon specifically for shoes and get them on there. Or, whenever you're rolling out new shoes, they're in this list that gets notified because they're obviously buying shoes from your company or whatever the case is, right? And so getting down to the nitty gritty, and it's all of those things that help take, someone that may just be a one-time buyer from you and turn them into sort of an evangelist where they're buying all the time from you and they're telling other people to come buy from you as well.
Is that integrated? Just what you were saying, that if you know that someone's been in your site looking and maybe they started and put something in the cart, but they didn't follow through on the checkout, do most services allow for that follow-up or that tickler that will bing me that, oh, here's somebody you might want to follow up with?
I'm not sure what Squarespace does. Shopify has something for that. It's basically a plugin, and then WordPress has one as well. They're both paid solutions, and so this is sort of the thing. WordPress and Shopify both have like third-party companies that will design and build solutions for things that put them out in the marketplace. And so the one for WordPress is called like follow-up emails or something, I think. I can see the logo in my head, but it doesn't have the name with it. But it's great, and I tell you, it works. Someone puts something in their cart, they don't check out, it's going to send them an email saying, hey, I think you forgot something. And then they're like, yeah, I guess I really do want that. Click. And then it's like, then they bought it, So, and putting them in those email signups. One of our clients, they sell knives. They sell not knives like weapon knives, but knives like collector knives. They're very they're very expensive. You wouldn't use them as anything other than just to put on a bookshelf or whatever. And their whole thing is they're selling things online. Every time a new one gets uploaded that's in a certain category, if you subscribe to that category, you get an email about it. They call it the maker email alert. So there's certain makers that, knife makers people want to get subscribed to. And that's really cool. And so you could do that with anything. You could have several, let's say you've got several different brands on your website that you're selling or reselling. Anytime we upload something in this brand, someone can get, they could subscribe to that brand and get a notification for it, or a certain category or product or something. And those are huge. Those are really nice because it's keeping people quickly. They're getting a notification as soon as it uploads, and they have an opportunity to purchase it immediately.
Okay. Well, that's great information. I think we honestly could stay on here for another hour discussing all this. So I've really enjoyed it, and I know I certainly want to connect with you later, Justin.
Cool.
So I think that, let's see, Sandy, do we have his contact information in the chat?
What I will do is send out your slides and that fact sheet that you provided to me, Justin. And once I get the video from today uploaded to YouTube, and just send the link to everybody that participated, and I'll include you all as well.
Cool.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
No, I received my wow moment. I've got my list of my sheet of paper that I filled out.
Okay. Well, we thank everyone for attending, and our next presentation, I believe, is on the 18th. Is that correct, Sandy?
That will be our friend Jonathan Eveden with Aegis IT Solutions. He will be focusing on sourcing software, when to buy, and when to write your own software. So that will be again on March the 18th. Hope everybody can join us for that. And Justin, I just want to say for myself, thank you. I know you're trying to run a lot of things in a business, and to take time to develop a presentation, because I think all of the partners know that you don't just sit down and it hits you, and it takes a lot of research. So I do appreciate you sharing your expertise and your time with us today. Again, I learned a lot, and I have a friend that's getting ready to start a website for our church. So that your discussion is very timely where we're at in that case. A quick reminder to let everybody know that today's video will be up on Virginia Community Capital's Facebook and YouTube channels, as well as our partners. So if you found value in this content today, please share with someone else. That's why we're doing this, is to put the content out there and to help our business and nonprofit community not only survive post-COVID, but to grow through this. So thank you. And I don't know if any of the other partners want to say anything before we end. They're very shy, you can tell. But thanks again, and I look forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks, and enjoy a little bit of this the summer. At least the sun. It's better than the rain and the slush. So thanks again. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.